I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged.
Every monarch in British history, going back nearly 2 centuries, all the way to Queen Victoria, has lived in Buckingham Palace. It is not just a building, it is the physical symbol of the crown, the balcony where royals appear after coronations, after wars, after jubilees, the address the world associates with the very idea of a British king. King Charles just announced he will never live there. Let that sink in for a second. A £369 million taxpayer-funded renovation, a decade of scaffolding, rewiring, and restoration. And when it is finally done, the King and Queen will stay at Clarence House. That announcement alone broke a tradition 200 years in the making. But here is the thing, that headline is almost a distraction, because behind it, buried in palace briefings, whispered by insiders, and slowly coming into focus, is a much bigger story. One that touches power, legacy, loyalty, and the most complicated relationship inside the royal family. It is the story of what happens to Camilla's title when Charles is gone. And right now, Charles is making moves that suggest he already knows exactly what he wants and is determined to lock it in before it is too late. Stay with us, because this is not just a story about a title. This is a story about a king fighting for his wife's place in history, the title that almost never was. To understand what is happening right now, you need to understand just how extraordinary Camilla's current position already is, because it was never supposed to go this far. When Charles married Camilla Parker Bowles in April 2005, the palace was still walking on eggshells. Princess Diana had been dead less than 8 years. The public grief was still raw. The resentment toward Camilla, the woman who, in Diana's own words, made a marriage of 3, had not faded. So when the wedding was announced, Clarence House released a careful, diplomatic statement. Camilla would not use the title Princess of Wales. She would be the Duchess of Cornwall. And when Charles eventually became king, she would take the title Princess Consort, not Queen. It was a concession to public sentiment, a way of saying, we know how the world sees this, and we are not going to push it. But then something changed. In February 2022, Queen Elizabeth II, on the occasion of her Platinum Jubilee, issued a statement, a very deliberate, very intentional statement. She said it was her sincere wish that when Charles became king, Camilla would be known as Queen Consort, not Princess Consort, Queen. That single sentence rewrote the plan entirely. And when Elizabeth died that September and Charles acceded to the throne, Camilla became exactly that, Queen Consort. Then at the coronation on May 6, 2023, the first coronation in 70 years, she was crowned Queen Camilla, standing in Westminster Abbey, wearing a crown, before a global audience of millions. Think about that journey for a moment. From a woman who was not even allowed to use the title Princess of Wales, to a crowned Queen of England, in under 2 decades. But now, the palace is being forced to confront the next question, one that is far more complicated than the last one. And the answer is not Queen Elizabeth's to give this time. The clock is ticking, and everyone knows it. Here is the reality that nobody inside the palace can pretend away. King Charles III is 76 years old. He was diagnosed with cancer in 2024. He stepped back briefly from public duties during treatment, and Camilla stepped forward to cover for him at events. He has since returned to public-facing engagements, but the diagnosis changed the atmosphere inside the royal household permanently. William has reportedly been urging his father to scale back, to rest, to prioritize his health over the royal schedule. Sources close to the palace say that this advice has not always been welcome, particularly because Camilla has been pushing in the opposite direction. She reportedly wants Charles to maintain a visible public presence, to project strength, to keep the monarchy looking unshakable. You can already see the fault line forming, because on one side you have William, the heir, increasingly impatient, increasingly assertive, already signaling the kind of monarchy he intends to run. And on the other side, you have Camilla, a woman who waited her entire life for this role, who finally holds the title she was always denied, and who has absolutely no intention of surrendering her position one day before she must. According to a source cited by Radar Online, the tension came to a head around a state banquet held to welcome Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. William believed Charles was simply not well enough to attend. Camilla was adamant that their presence was essential, that cancelling would fuel speculation and invite scrutiny the family could not afford. Charles attended. But that conflict, played out quietly behind closed doors, tells you everything about what is coming. Because the question of Camilla's title after Charles is gone is not just a question of protocol. It is a question of power, and of who ultimately gets to decide. The title question, what the palace won't say out loud. So what actually happens to Camilla's title when King Charles dies? The answer, according to constitutional experts and royal historians, is this. Her current title, Queen Camilla, ends the moment Charles does. Under long-standing royal convention, a queen consort holds her title by virtue of being the wife of the reigning sovereign. The moment that sovereign dies, she is no longer the wife of a king. She is his widow, and widows have a different title. The historically appropriate designation is Queen Dowager. It is a term with centuries of precedent. It acknowledges her previous status, honors her service, and separates her clearly from whoever is now the reigning queen. In this case, that would eventually be Catherine, Princess of Wales, who would become Queen Catherine the moment William ascends to the throne. But here is where things get complicated. That title, Queen Dowager, is not automatic. It does not appear on the accession paperwork without someone choosing it, and the person who makes that choice is not Charles. It is not Camilla. It is William. Royal correspondent Charlie Proctor, writing for Royal Central, put it plainly. The matter will ultimately fall to King William. Though governed by precedent, royal titling allows for discretion. William could give her Queen Dowager. He could give her the lesser designation of Princess Dowager. He could, in theory, allow her to revert to Duchess of Cornwall, the title she held before Charles became king. Or he could strip her title back in ways that would be felt across the institution. Now, do insiders think he would actually do that? No. Historians say it would be constitutionally unusual, practically chaotic, and symbolically damaging. But the fact that the question is being asked at all tells you something important about the temperature inside the family right now. Ask yourself this. Why would a king feel the need to make a personal plea to his son about the treatment of his wife? You don't plead for things you are confident about. The plea that changed everything. In April 2026, a story broke that the palace did not deny. According to reporting by Radar Online and LBC, King Charles has made a personal and private request to Prince William. Protect Camilla after I am gone. Not a formal instruction, not a legal covenant. A father asking his son to take care of his wife. The source told Radar Online that Charles wants William to give Camilla the freedom to shape her own role within the royal framework, without interference, to allow her to continue her charity work, to give her a residence, to treat her with the dignity her position deserves. LBC framed it more starkly, reporting that Charles has urged William to protect Camilla's role within the royal family after his death, amid what the outlet described as a simmering rift between William and his stepmother over the king's health. A source told the outlet, William is already showing a ruthless streak. It's no wonder Charles worries he's unlikely to find a place for Camilla in his new order. Ruthless streak. New order. This is not the language of a harmonious family navigating an orderly transition. This is the language of a succession with fault lines running right through it. And buried in that same reporting was another detail, one that adds a layer of urgency to Charles's concern. Sources say that William previously removed Camilla's sister, Annabel Elliot, from the royal payroll, quietly. No announcement, no explanation, just gone.
If that is the playbook, the
implications for Camilla herself are uncomfortable to even consider. William's resentment, the wound that will not close. This is the part that the palace has spent 20 years trying to manage, and it is the part that keeps resurfacing in biography after biography, in tabloid report after tabloid report, in the body language between a stepmother and a stepson at every public engagement they share. William has never forgiven Camilla for what happened to his parents' marriage. Not really. He is too disciplined to say it publicly, too strategic to act on it recklessly. But the resentment is there. Multiple sources across multiple years have confirmed it. Royal biographer Christopher Anderson has written that Camilla has always been a little afraid of William, and that the two have always had a tense relationship, with William merely tolerating his stepmother rather than embracing her. Royal author Tom Bower told The Mirror that Harry fears William will eventually Banish him with no standing in Britain once Charles is gone. If that is how William treats his own brother, born of the same mother, raised in the same house, what might he do with the woman his brother and he both hold responsible for that mother's suffering? Camilla and Harry have their own complicated history. In his memoir Spare, Harry did not hold back about his feelings toward his stepmother. He was publicly, explicitly hostile in ways that William has never been. But that does not mean William's silence represents acceptance. It represents strategy. And the moment Charles is no longer here to keep the peace, that strategy may no longer be necessary. Sources cited in multiple 2026 reports have suggested that while William has received guidance, reportedly from advisors, counselors, and royal mentors, to rise above personal grievance and think like a diplomat when he ascends the throne, no one can guarantee how those private feelings translate into institutional decisions once he holds all the power. The question of Camilla's title will be one of the first tests, the Buckingham Palace decision and what it signals. Now let us come back to that headline, because it is not as separate from the Camilla story as it first appears. In June 2026, King Charles and Queen Camilla announced that after the completion of the £369 million Buckingham Palace renovation, due in 2027, they will not be moving in. The palace will remain the operational and ceremonial center of the monarchy, but the King and Queen will stay at Clarence House, their home, their preference, their decision. Charles became the first British monarch since Queen Victoria to make this choice. The reaction was immediate. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams told GB News that while the decision marks a significant step for the monarchy, the optics are likely to raise eyebrows because every sovereign for almost 2 centuries has called Buckingham Palace home. But read between the lines on this one. Charles and Camilla staying at Clarence House is not just a lifestyle preference. Clarence House is their residence. It is where they have lived since 2003. It is where Camilla is most comfortable. And crucially, it is the question of what happens to Clarence House after Charles dies that carries enormous weight. Royal protocol and history suggest that widowed consorts are often moved to separate establishments. There is a real possibility that William, once king, could redirect Clarence House for another purpose, redirecting Camilla to Mill House, the private estate in Wiltshire she has owned since the mid-1990s. It is a beautiful property, but it is not a royal residence. It is private, and moving there would represent a quiet, graceful, but unmistakable step back from royal life entirely. Camilla reportedly transferred the ownership of Mill to her children as part of estate planning. Read that detail carefully. She is planning for a future without the crown. What the history books tell us, there is a precedent worth examining here, because the British monarchy has navigated this exact territory before. When King George VI died in 1952, his widow, Queen Elizabeth, faced an identical naming problem. Her daughter had just become Queen Elizabeth II. Having 2 Queen Elizabeths would have been confusing to the point of chaos. So rather than take the title Queen, Dowager, she became Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother, a designation that honored her uniquely, acknowledged her status, and solved the practical problem. But Camilla's situation is different in one critical way. She is not the birth mother of the next king. She is his stepmother. The title Queen Mother, with all its warmth and national sentiment, simply does not apply here. No constitutional advisor would support it. No historian would endorse it. So Queen Dowager, it almost certainly will be. But the question of how she is treated within that title, what resources, what staff, what residence, what public role she is permitted to keep, will be entirely up to William. And that is precisely why Charles is making his request now, while he still can. Camilla's ambition, the woman who wouldn't wait. Let us take a moment to talk about Camilla herself, because she is not a passive figure in this story. Sources close to the Queen have told us weekly, repeatedly, that Camilla loves her responsibilities, that she has always wanted to be queen, that she is not going to let it go so fast. She has spent nearly 20 years building this position, from the low-key civil ceremony at Windsor in 2005 to the controversial coronation crown in 2023. And she is not the kind of woman who accepts marginalization quietly. She currently holds patronages with over 90 charities. She has championed causes around domestic violence, sexual assault survivors, literacy, and women's health. She has appeared, without her husband, at major events when Charles's health required it. She has given interviews, made speeches, traveled internationally. She has quietly, methodically made herself indispensable. In December 2025, Camilla gave a candid interview to BBC Radio 4 in which she revealed she had been attacked on a train as a teenager. She talked about gender-based violence with a directness and personal authority that royal consorts rarely bring to public discourse. It was not the behavior of a woman preparing to fade into the background, and yet the shadow hanging over all of this remains. Because no amount of patronages, no amount of public appearances, no amount of personal courage changes the constitutional reality. When Charles dies, the title changes, the residence changes, the access changes. The only thing that doesn't automatically change is the name she is known by, and that, in ways both symbolic and psychological, matters more than almost anything else. The final decision. What Charles has set in motion. So what exactly is the final decision that Charles has made? Here is the picture that has emerged across multiple sourced reports in 2026. Charles has made a personal plea to William, reportedly directly, as a father to a son, to allow Camilla to define her own role within the royal framework after his death. He has assured Camilla that she will continue to have a place within the royal household. He has structured his financial and domestic affairs, staying at Clarence House, making Buckingham Palace a ceremonial rather than residential site, in ways that preserve Camilla's current living situation for as long as he is alive. He has publicly acknowledged her role at every possible opportunity, ensuring that her contribution to the crown is part of the historical record in a way that cannot be erased. And he has made something else clear through all of this: maneuvering. He does not fully trust that William will protect his wife on his own, which is why he is doing everything in his power to build in protections now, while he is still king, while he still has the authority, while he can still shape the terms. This is a man who knows the clock is running, and he is using every tick of it. What happens next? The succession question. Let us be direct about what this means for the monarchy going forward. William is going to be king. That is not a matter of if. It is only a matter of when. And when that moment comes, which could be years from now, or which history could force upon all of us sooner, the first decisions he makes will define the character of his reign. Does he honor his father's request and allow Camilla the dignity she has earned? Or does the resentment that has been smoldering for nearly 3 decades finally find its expression in the small institutional decisions that would quietly diminish her standing? Royal historian Carolyn Harris has noted that Camilla's title does not just represent her role. It changes in relation to who is ruling at the time. It is relational, it is political, it is personal, and William's decision about that title will be read by historians, by the public, by royal watchers around the world as a statement about who he is as a king. Does he put the institution above personal feeling, or does Diana's ghost follow Camilla all the way to the end? These are not comfortable questions, but they are the real questions. And the fact that Charles is making his plea now, openly enough for it to reach multiple news outlets simultaneously, suggests that even he is not entirely certain of the answer. The bigger picture, a monarchy in transition. Zoom out for a moment, because what is happening inside the palace walls right now is not just about Camilla, or Charles, or William. It is about an institution in the middle of a profound and irreversible transformation. Queen Elizabeth reigned for 70 years. She was the anchor, the constant, the face on every coin, every passport, every official document across the Commonwealth, across 7 decades of history. When she died, the monarchy lost its center of gravity in a way that no one inside it has fully admitted. Charles has spent his reign doing 2 things simultaneously: honoring the institution his mother built, and slowly, carefully reshaping it around his own vision, paying his taxes voluntarily, and publishing the figures for the first time in British royal history, declining to live in Buckingham Palace, traveling to Pope Francis days before his death, making state visits, continuing public duties through cancer treatment. He is writing his legacy in real time, and part of that legacy is Camilla. The decision not to move into Buckingham Palace, the financial transparency, the personal plea to William, these are not isolated choices. They are a coherent strategy from a man who understands that kings are ultimately judged by what they leave behind, not just by what they accomplish. What Charles is trying to leave behind is a wife who is protected, a marriage that is honored, a title that is preserved. Whether William allows that to stand will be the defining act of the transition from one reign to the next. The question the palace has not answered. Here is where we land. King Charles has made his final position clear in every way available to him, short of issuing a formal royal decree. He wants Camilla protected. He wants her title respected. He wants her role preserved. But there is one thing he cannot do. He cannot make William love his stepmother. He cannot undo the phone calls that Diana made to Camilla during a marriage falling apart in real time. He cannot restore the years that William lost watching his parents' marriage disintegrate while Camilla's name echoed through every conversation. He cannot legislate forgiveness. So the final decision about Camilla's royal title is not Charles's to make. It never was. It belongs to a man who, by all accounts, has spent his entire adult life managing his feelings about the woman who will one day need his mercy. And the question hanging over Buckingham Palace, over Clarence House, over every carefully worded palace briefing and every diplomatic royal photo is simple. When the moment finally comes, will William choose the institution over the wound? History will be watching. So will we.